He's editor-in-chief of Breitbart News and a New York Times best-selling author. And on this podcast, he brings deep research, prescient analysis, and world-class guests. He's Alex Marlow, and this is the Alex Marlow Show.
All right, this is the Alex Marlow Show, Hawaiian Shirt Friday today. Just going to be simple stuff. I'm just going to roll, bring you what I'm thinking about the news. And if you want to catch up over the weekend on some of the interviews we had some good interviews this week. Carol Roth yesterday was very interesting on the tariffs and the tariff messaging. And I think she provided how you can message on the tariffs to people who aren't necessarily pro-tariff, because there's a lot of people, I think, in like her, who would like to see Trump succeed, but aren't necessarily knee-jerk pro-tariff as someone like me is. It's not knee-jerk, but it's after a lot of thought, I've arrived that I like tariffs. But anyway, so that's good. And Emma Jo's always good, who we had earlier in the week. And the list goes on. A lot of fun guests. And those content will be relevant over the weekend if you're looking for more stuff to do while you're driving around. I will tell you, I'm starting today with something that's very important to me. I'm calling for the end of the Scholastic book fairs. This is going on in the Marlow household. There's been a lot of drama this week for me. It's lengthened the week. It's extended it because it's book fair week at my kids' elementary school. And this is a big hoax and it must end. So Scholastic, who runs these book fairs, is a woke company. I asked Marissa Streit at PragerU, who do you guys think that you're competing with? Are you guys competing with Disney, or trying to get, but they're not an entertainment company. They're an education company. And they said, no, our top competitor is Scholastic. And I was thinking about this because I had Carol Roth on the show about her latest PragerU video where she's talking about government confiscation of money, how the government doesn't create money, and it confiscates at gunpoint more wealth every year from Americans than the entire GDP of every country on earth other than the US and China, which is shocking. It should be unacceptable. And PragerU is the alternative to Scholastic. And Scholastic was making my life difficult this week because the kids at the book fair, and they just assign a time where you're supposed to go over there and you're supposed to buy these Scholastic books that they have. They've tricked every school in the country to have these books, and they're not good. They've got all this woke stuff in them. And there's just way better books out there. And you should really be going with your parent to the library or the bookstore. Look, in my household, I want to encourage as much reading as possible. It is one place where I take the reins off. The kids have an unlimited budget for books that are actual books. And you can go to the library as well if that's not your situation. I think that you should support the industry of books personally as a member of it. So I try to buy books when we can, but you could check them out from the library for free as well. But the point is the parent should be having more oversight than just having your first grader or even your preschooler. I've got a TK, or they call it UPK now. I don't know what that's about, but it was transitional kindergarten, I had a universal pre-kindergarten. I don't know. They just keep changing the names for no reason. But I have to send them with cash to school so they can buy a book that will be stupid. I will tell you, I got to pull up this photo. I hope I have my phone on me, because if not, I'm going to have to. The media is broken. For decades, big cable and legacy media have filtered information to hide the truth. But thanks to podcasts and new media like this show, the truth can break through, providing voices and views the legacy outlets block from the air. But big cable still has one major way to control information, and that's access. They do this by limiting access to something called spectrum, the invisible airwaves that power affordable wireless internet, and by forcing you into their bundles, keeping independent media out of reach. Trump and Republicans in Congress have a chance to do something big here by making more spectrum available and breaking big cable's stranglehold on information. So there's a couple things you could do to find out more. You can go to endthecableopoly.org. That's endthecableopoly.org for more information about how to make more spectrum available. And if you're convinced, you should call your senators and your members of Congress and say, hey, why don't you work with President Trump and try to make more spectrum available? So endthecableopoly.org to find more. Okay, so let me show you what Master Marlow Jr. got with the money that we foolishly sent him with. He got one book called Sharks Up Close, which has already caused problems in our house because I started reading Sharks Up Close to him last night, and he was lobbying for more. I told him we're doing 2 more pages, and he was lobbying for 6 more pages. And then I quizzed him on the shape of the dorsal fin of the shark versus the shape of the dorsal fin of the dolphin, which was the last thing we'd read about in the book. And he had no idea. So he wasn't really paying attention. He was just trying to negotiate with me to stay up later. And then he got very embarrassed when he couldn't answer the question, got very upset, and it ruined the whole end of the night. Okay, so that's number one. The other book he got is something called Dinosaurs. This was in the $5 section, and also both of those were the $5. And then he got something called Animal Battles. So this is the type of stuff that reveals that he's very much a he/him. We know that about Master Marlow Jr. But also he got Sharks, Dinosaurs, Animal Battles. I have no idea these are good books. There's plenty of good books in these subjects that we have in the house already. I don't need any of these. And yet we've supported the Scholastic grift machine. But none of this compares to what Master Marlow got. But I'll tell you, also Master Marlow Jr., this is a funny one. I didn't have any cash on me. I normally carry cash, and Mrs. Dr. Marlow does not. She comes from a certain background where she was always a credit card kid. We were right at the transition. I was not there. I was not in a credit card type situation growing up. But she's a credit card kid. I was not. I was a cash kid. So I keep the cash in the family, but I happen to have no cash at the time. It was the day for our house to get cleaned. And so I had to get our housekeeper, Sandra, to lend me money so that the 3-year-old, or I guess it was he 5 now, the 5-year-old could go waste money at the Scholastic Book Fair. So that's what happened there. And the book that my son, Master Marlow Jr., picked out, he only picked out one book. And I'm going to hold it up for the audience to see, for those of you to read it, because there's a lot you can see in this. This is the book that my brilliant 6-year-old son picked, Master Marlow. It's called Terry's Crew by Terry Crews. So let me tell you all the things that are triggering to me about this book. And I will start with Master Marlow, as far as we can tell, is one of the smartest kids in his class. And I'm bragging, obviously, but he's a bright boy for a 6-year-old. And he selected, of all the books that are available, this book by Scholastic, of course, by Terry Crews, one of the biggest losers in the world, who is this guy who he's an actor, and he used to be football player, pro wrestler or something. He hosts game shows. And he's one of these guys with a big ball of energy and is totally full of himself. And this story is a biographical thing about his pursuit of becoming a multi-hyphenate, which is totally self-serving because there's just not anything you would recommend to normal people. It's just like, you're going to be an astronaut, and you're going to be a magician, and you're going to be a great a pole dancer, and you're also going to be a comic, and then you're also going to be you're going to develop a new form of nuclear fission. This is what he's doing, and this is what he writes about. It's a embellished story of his own biography, and on how he overcame bullying at a prep school or something to achieve all this stuff. And some people doubted that he could be a pro football player and a NASA scientist, and also be world's coolest guy. This guy sucks. I hate this guy. And I've always hated him since Me Too, where he became the face of Me Too, even though he's 6'4" and he's built like a linebacker in the NFL. And the story that happened to him is apparently in I guess it was like 2016, 2017. He was at a party in Hollywood, and some industry executive grabbed his junk at a party. And that's not great, but it's like he had his junk grabbed, and he rode this thing for years throughout all the Me Too movement. To one point, he was literally testifying in Congress because someone grabbed his junk one time. And for me, that was the end of the Me Too movement. It was the Abu Ghraib of the Me Too movement. Remember Abu Ghraib was kind of marked the beginning of the end of the Iraq War. Well, once America got busted with that, we were kind of like, maybe we should get out of here. That was the Abu Ghraib of the Me Too for me, was when Terry Crews, who looks like he could beat up a grizzly bear. Like he had his crotch grabbed one time, and he decided, I'm going to testify in Congress about it instead of just moving on. I was joking about this at the T-ball practice yesterday, with a friend of mine, a dad on the T-ball team, who was in the service, combat veteran, and now he trains police officers in high-speed chases. So, and I said, can you imagine if one of your buddies grabbed your junk and you said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to testify in Congress about this. I'm going to go all the way to Congress and testify. So that's Terry Crews about. And my brilliant 6-year-old supports him with buying this Terry's Crew book where he learns that with the power of friendship. Oh, and of course his cast of friends is just as diverse as possible. Indian woman, white nerdy guy. I mean, it's just like, oh, it's exactly what you'd expect this to be. And it's designed for middle grade audiences. But my favorite part about this is you can see the price, $3. It's in the sale bin. Because who wants to read about Terry's Crew? So annoying. And I just thought that this just reminds me, I'm going to use my platform to call for the end of the Scholastic Book Fair. Go to the bookstore with your parents. Go to the library with your parents. That's it. No more book fair. It's all a grift by the Scholastic company to feed you woke nonsense for your kids. So I'm fed up. I'm sick of it. And it just maybe the last straw was having to borrow money from the nanny, which I paid her back. Sandra has been made whole. So there you go. That's just a wild thing that I felt like, you know what? It's a Friday show. It's a Hawaiian Shirt Friday. I wanted to bring that to your attention because now I feel like I've gotten something off my chest that is quite important. Schools funded by Mark Zuckerberg and his wife to help inner city kids have announced that they're closing. So 2 schools funded by Zuckerberg, Priscilla Chan, who's his wife, New York Times reporting the primary school tuition-free educational institution is closing its doors summer 2026, located in Palo Alto, established in 2016 with the mission to serve children from low-income families, Lucas Nolan writes for us at Breitbart, by providing them with access to education, healthcare, and social workers under one roof. Okay, this is my point. Education does not start in the classroom. Education starts in the home. And that's why we hate all the trans stuff. And that's why we hate the fact that Biden's DOJ went after parents who were taking interest in what was going on in schools. Is the problem is the chaos in the home. That's why we hate it for so long. And my friend Larry Elder, or my colleague at Salem, was the original champion of this, the breaking down of the nuclear family by changing norms and holding different groups to lower standards. That is what causes a lot of the problems. It is not stuff that can be fixed at a government level. It has to be fixed at an individual level and at a family level. It has to be fixed by higher standards and with a coherent home life. So we can't just outsource the book purchases to the schools. We can't just do that. We can't just assume that just because the school is free, it will be a good school. This happens over and over again. The Biden family, they were involved in this charter school thing called Mavericks. And that ended up going belly up, just wasting a ton of money. And the Biden brothers were, making bank off of it. Did LeBron James have schools that work? I got to look into this because he's doing this too. I got to look into if those are working. I'm not saying it can't work, but I'm just saying that it starts in the home. In the home is where the schools, the education has to begin. So I just thought that was important. I thought that was an interesting news connection to my personal confusion about what's going on, these stupid book fairs that must end. All right, biggest news today, FBI's arrested a judge who helped illegal migrant dodge deportations. The FBI's arrested a left-wing Wisconsin judge for allegedly helping an illegal migrant escape arrest, according to a Wisconsin newspaper. Neil Monroe had the jump on this for us at Breitbart News. So Judge Hannah Dugan of Milwaukee, charged of obstruction after evidence that Dugan obstructing an immigration arrest operation last week. So this is interesting. Kash Patel pointed that out. Patel wrote, "We believe Judge Dugan intentionally misdirected federal agents away from the subject to be arrested in her courthouse. Eduardo Flores Ruiz, allowing the subject, an illegal alien, to evade arrest." So this was over a 2019 arrest, I believe, and helping him, I guess, out on the lam. And this is really a big deal because this is a tactic that I think the left was trying to put on Trump. They were trying to get Trump to overdo something, to stand his ground politically in such a way where he's in defiance of the law. And then they would try to bust him on that, try to impeach him on that. But really what's happened in this case is that you've got a judge who, we know these judges are out there. We know they're operating very politically. So, but if they're trying to prevent the federal government from being able to enforce immigration laws, and they're going out of their way to do it, and they're intentionally misdirecting federal agents, if that claim is true, then how is that not arrestable? Of course, that's a crime. So I'm really excited to see this play out, and I like the aggressive tactics because we're witnessing day after day another injunction, another robust effort to try to stop the Trump administration from being able to do basic things like deport illegal aliens. And this is a hill to die on because we cannot give due process to 30 million illegal aliens. We know that. So if these judges are not going to be cooperative in allowing us to enforce the laws at a federal level, then what do we got? We don't have anything as society. So I'm glad to see the crackdown, but it's obviously highly dramatic. People are going absolutely nuts for it online, and we'll continue to have breaking developments for you at Breitbart.com throughout the weekend. But we need to come up with the aggressive tactics that are available to us. We had an exclusive story earlier in the week. Secretary Duffy is warning blue states, you got to comply with Trump's orders or you're going to lose transportation funding. And that's a big deal because that's going to make a lot of their constituents very upset if they lose access to funding that is provided to people for transportation. So, and some of this has to do with DEI, of course. You got to stop all the DEI stuff, but also the immigration stuff, because the immigration issue really touches almost every area of the bureaucracy. So if they're resisting compliance with immigration and custom enforcements, then the Department of Transportation says you're not going to get grants. So we need to make this a wholesale effort. We need to normalize it that you are complying, or else if you're not complying, you're going to lose money. You might even go to jail over it. And I'm into it. Let's see if there are any mistakes made. But the spirit of it very much applies. And I think that the Democrats are continuing to stake out these unbelievable positions where there is where they believe that the illegal immigration laws do not apply. If they decide they don't apply, this feels like a battle we can win and we must win. All right, I got some local news coverage of the detained judge. Let's see how they're framing it up. Let's play this.
Judge Hannah Dugan has been on the Milwaukee County bench for 9 years, but is herself under scrutiny after an incident involving a man wanted by immigration agents outside her courtroom Friday. According to a law enforcement source, ICE agents were waiting outside Dugan's courtroom for a man making a court appearance there, but Dugan is alleged to have shielded him to avoid his ICE detention.
All right, fine. Good. It looks good. Seems fair. So there's a protest going on, obviously, because remember, the left will make it so that we cannot get a victory. This is one thing that they do quite well. They try to frame things up so that we're not allowed to win ever, even if we've got someone dead to rights. Take the Abrego Garcia case, which everyone has now acknowledged that he's almost certainly was involved in human trafficking, human smuggling, and yet he is being treated like a saint. He's being treated far better than the angel families, the angel moms, and that's just an obvious point that I've been making all week. Feels like people caught up to it. Let's see what's going on with these protests.
Justice, no peace. Judge Dugan will be free. No justice, no peace. Judge Dugan will be free. No justice, no peace. Judge Dugan will be free.
No justice, no peace. Judge Dugan will be free. It looks chilly over there. A lot of older people. And I'm trying to take a look at the demographics. A lot of heavy-set people. And let's see, what other observations can I make here from the images? Which one do you see, Misty? Oh yeah, those are some really unbelievable pants. There's no tapering whatsoever. Yeah. What is the deal with that hair? That is definitely a multicolored hair. That's like a multi-hyphenate. Terry Crews would call that a multi-hyphenate hairstyle. All right, let's play some more.
No justice, no peace. Judge Dugan will be free. No justice, no peace. Judge Dugan will be.
There's one guy right in the middle who's not chanting, and either he's a plant or he's world's laziest man. Could you imagine showing up at a protest and you don't even have the heart to chant? Are they really committed to this thing? I don't think they're really committed on it. If someone brought their dog, maybe they're just on a dog walk and they just joined. All right. That really is some awesome hair. Good observation there, Misty. So this is what we're looking at, guys. And the left is going to continue to get over their skis on this and act as though that they've got a winning issue, which they don't if we play it right. They could still play it right, but you see something really interesting that I saw. What outlet am I reading from here? Where is this from? This is MSN.com, which syndicates a lot of mainstream stuff. I'm trying to figure out whether this is like a serious paper. Yeah, LA Times. Okay, so LA Times What happens if Trump doesn't obey court orders? New spotlight on U.S. Marshals. So the key here is the question: what happens if Trump doesn't obey court orders? Trump is obeying court orders, and this is where we've got this Judge Dugan busted, is that she's clearly not obeying the rules. So if Trump continues to abide by the rules, he's got infinite options. It is not sustainable to let his entire agenda get derailed by these judges. So, but until we've got a coherent plan that we're confident will work, choosing not to ignore court orders is wise, because that means that there's no constitutional crisis. It gives him unlimited credibility. Once he starts defying court orders, you're putting yourself on the path to impeachment. I'm not saying there isn't a day where I won't come into the show and say, I think it's worth it. I think he just has to completely ignore everyone and move ahead. There's no other way, because I know it's not sustainable. We've got to come up with a solution. And I've got time earmarked over the weekend to work on solutions. I've got a meeting with a big shot attorney in the Senate Judiciary over the weekend. Well, I'm going to go through it. I will report back to the show anything we conclude. I've got a ton of notes already. I'm ready to go on this. But if Trump is making a smart move, in my opinion, if he is choosing not to violate court orders and to let the other side continue to mess up. So it's really big. And with his aggressive economic maneuvering, we want to make sure the Republicans can win the House and the Senate with a much more unfavorable Senate map in this next election. The Senate map in 2024 was much better for Republicans. And it is, if the tariffs cause short-term pain for people, there's not a guarantee that we win in 2 years, and that will really derail Trump's agenda. So he's got to have these calculations in mind. And so far, I think he's doing fine. I think he's doing fine on this, and we're going to we will keep all of you updated on what's going on. But it is one judge after the next keeps blocking his stuff, and we want to expose all these people. I have individual profiles on all of these people that I'm about to mention at Breitbart.com. I'm trying to make cheat sheets for you so you understand who these people are. But here's one, Judge Alvin Hellerstein. He has extended an order blocking deportations of illegals detained under the Aliens Enemies Act. And he argued that Trump had acted like a medieval inquisition. Nominated by Bill Clinton, he clerked at the SDNY, Southern District of New York. And he spent a lot of his career in the private sector before becoming a big Democrat activist, a Democrat donor. And he was the judge who ordered the release of Michael Cohen from prison to home confinement. Michael Cohen, of course, was the rat who was trying to bust Trump for non-crimes in order so that he could get lessened sentences. He presided over the Harvey Weinstein case. That's a big case. And there's a laundry list of rulings where he's siding with a lot of the people who are, I would say, on the left. Abu Ghraib is an Abu Ghraib connection. He ordered the U.S. government to release 4 videos and dozens of photographs of detainees at the Abu Ghraib prison. I'll tell you, that was the beginning of the end of that war. 2005, I'm telling you, it's a really big deal. Beryl Howell refused to recuse herself from a case regarding Democrat-tied law firm Perkins Coie, even though she was nominated by Obama in 2010. Howell's a Democrat donor. And Elise Stefanik filed an ethics complaint against Howell in 2023 for partisan speech and illegal election meddling. Howell insinuated that reelecting Trump would lead to fascism in America. And then she's allowed to preside over these cases and block part of Trump's agenda. 2020, Howell ruled against then U.S. Agency for Global Media CEO Michael Pack that he acted unconstitutionally and investigated a deep-seated bias against President Trump and the agency. So just trying to dismantle the deep state. I met Michael Pack. He's a serious guy. The guy's not joking around. Tried to investigate deep state bias against Trump, and she ruled that that was unconstitutional. She ruled to allow Jack Smith to sidestep attorney-client privilege protections to force President Trump's lawyer Evan Corcoran to testify before a federal grand jury. So the list goes on. She ordered Giuliani to pay $150 million to election workers as part of a defamation suit. These people are animated left-wingers. I've got a list. I've got more. It gets here's a Judge Charlotte N. Sweeney extended temporary restraining order. This was this week, barring the Trump administration from deporting illegal migrant criminals under the Alien Enemies Act, nominated by Biden, recommended by Democrat Colorado Senators Bennett and Hickenlooper. Her nomination failed to advance at the judiciary. Interesting. open homosexual, donated to Act Blue. So earmark donations to people like John Ossoff and Mark Kelly, Joe Biden. So she ruled that a school district in Colorado must return books involving transgender ideology. So she's enforcing trans books in the schools. They must be in the schools. The schools can't be trusted on the books thing. They're just not trustworthy on it. So they want to groom the kids. And the trans stuff in the classroom brings the kids home in a confused state, and it disrupts the family life, and that disrupts America. There's a fundamental thing. It's not a free speech thing. It's about, do we want to protect the nuclear family? This person, Judge Charlotte N. Sweeney, is opposed to that. Let's see. What else? There's more stuff here, but we'll write up for you, Breitbart News. I'll also do an interview with Bradley Jay, who's one of our Capitol Hill reporters on this, for our Breitbart Fight Club show today for premium Breitbart subscribers. So that is always worth doing. But they're staking out these hard left issues. This is why I keep saying there's no real civil war going on. It's the hard left is winning the whole narrative battle on the left. They're not backing off of anything. The human smugglers are the good guys. The healthcare CEO murderers are the good guys. The trans activists are still the good guys. We're dark woke now. They're going to be a more aggressive form of woke. I brought this to you right away in the show. Everyone is a lot of imitators in the Marlow Show. I've seen a lot of my talking points show up on other shows after the fact. That's good. That's a compliment. But people are on the dark woke thing. I brought that to you right away. This is a real phenomenon that's happening. They are not convinced that they need to back off their leftism. They need to, a lot of them want to lean into it. Here's Maxwell Frost, the small child who's also a congressman.
This is what authoritarians do throughout history. They get into power, and guess what? They're not satisfied with the power they have. So they kind of tiptoe outside the law. They do it a bunch, and this is what Trump is doing. They'll break the law, and then what do? They look and listen to the public to see, do I have permission to keep going? I'm going to deport Mr. Abrego Garcia with no due process, and when the Supreme Court tells me to do something about it, I'm going to flip the bird at the Supreme Court.
So all this stuff. Why don't you describe what's going on? Where is he, by the way? It looks like he's got like a musical group behind him. This is one of the Democrats' tricks that they're doing to get energy. Is they want to get a musical act to get people to go listen to their speeches. He did this weird tiptoe motion where he's sticking his toe out and about, doing the hokey pokey. Very strange. Was it like I got to put the hokey pokey back? This is pretty good for the video.
Do I have permission to keep going?
Is that Chris Murphy back there?
I'm going to deport Mr. Abrego Garcia with no due process. And when the Supreme Court tells me to do something about it, I'm going to flip the bird at the Supreme Court. And then I'm going to listen and look at the public to see, does anyone give a shit? And
so he says bad words, flipping the bird, the Supreme Court. That's not what Trump's doing at all. Trump has abided by every court order. They don't have real arguments, so they just give lying arguments. Because they're not really making the real point. So the Abrego Garcia thing, I was looking into this, and this is really interesting. There is a case to be made. A lot of people are making the case that there is that what Trump has violated is there is a hold order on Garcia. But there's a retort to that it actually did not apply to him under the Alien Enemies Act because he's a terrorist. So it was thus inadmissible, the hold order. Now, the flip side to that is there's a retort to that argument that the hold order was in place before the Alien Enemies Act was invoked. Thus, it doesn't apply. And that's something the court's going to have to work out. That is above my pay grade at that point. But that's what's going on, why that continues to remain in the news at all. But on a political level, you would think at this point, once we figured out he's a human smuggler who probably beat his wife, then we should be good, right? But apparently not. We're still going to keep doing it because they're trusting that people are not going to get the full information. They're not going to read a Breitbart. They're not going to tune into a show like this where I'm explaining to you that he had 8 people in his car with no luggage, all who were registered to his house as their home address, and he was driving them across the country and got stopped in Tennessee with all these people. So obvious human smuggling, which he wasn't doing on his own. He wasn't freelancing. He was doing it as part of an international criminal syndicate. For sure, if you look into it, this is what we will find. That's why they said he had MS-13 connections. So but people are going to assume you're not going to get that information because that's not going to be leading the CBS News broadcast tonight. It's not going to be on the front page of the LA Times. So where are you going to get this information? You got to tune into alternative media to get it. But they'll maintain that there's a hold order, that Trump violated constitutional crisis, et cetera. But Trump's people will tell you that it does not apply because the Aliens Enemy Act. So there you go. So let's see if he does any more dance moves. Is that Chris Murphy back out there? Misty, is it? I think so. He needs to get his pants are too low. He needs a higher waistline. And I think it's time for him to hit the gym. I'm just saying he's someone who really thinks of himself as a public face. And I feel like he's got to have a little more commitment to lifting some weights. Just my thought.
And when we don't speak up, what are we telling him? Yes, we're telling him, go ahead and do what you want to do. That's why the protests are important. And they're working. I'm going to tell you, just last week.
So if you look at the crowd, these are all old whites in this audience. Really interesting. A lot of old whites. And it looks like there's one younger Latinx woman in the front, but everyone else is old whites. And that's a really interesting phenomenon. These are probably highly educated boomers. That's who the left is relying on now for whatever reason. That is their base, is overeducated, aging whites.
Just last week, 12 of my Republican colleagues wrote a letter to Mike Johnson saying, hey, look, if there's a budget that comes with Medicaid cuts, we got to vote no. I promise you, they would have never said that on the record if it wasn't for people showing up to their town halls and giving them hell, if it wasn't for other representatives going to their town halls and hosting town halls for them, if it wasn't for the millions of people going out on the streets, all this stuff.
One of my favorite things that we did this week is I played those Pete Buttigieg clips from yesterday where he tries to go on a podcast and he says nothing, but he says it very articulately. That's the phenomenon here at work. There's the Democrats who will lie to you, and I'll play some more of those in a second. And then there are the others who, well, they're all flagrantly dishonest. But Maxwell Frost speaks very well, but he's not really saying anything of substance. He's just announcing congratulations for holding protests and for going to a town hall. But we've accomplished nothing. Garcia's not coming back. It feels like the more we learn about him, the worse guy he is. But congrats on showing up at a rally. So it's just pandering. It's not really going anywhere. It's called grandstanding. So we've pulled a clip of, this is a blast from the past. This is Al Gore. If you guys wonder why Al Gore seemingly is nowhere, even though he was nearly president of the United States before George Bush was selected by the Supreme Court in 2000 to be president, here's what he's up to in terms of his mindset. Check this out.
Our Constitution, written by our founders, is intended to protect us against a threat identical to Donald Trump, someone who seeks power at all costs to get more power.
Does that work? Because he gets into some wild content that I want to break down, but does that work? Because for his personality, I feel like if I ever came into the show like that, people would get completely distracted by my tone. And even if I had a great point, no one would ever hear it. Because it'd just be, why is Marlow screaming so much? Why can other people do that? But when Mark Levin comes in screaming, I love it. It completely works for me. So, but there's just some people, is that a good look for him? And he's even doing this sort of raspy and rolling of his voice. Donald Trump's a real fascist. Like he's pitching his voice in a certain way. He looks very stressed out. Looks like a very stressed out guy, Al Gore. I don't know if these people are appealing enough. I just don't. They got to try to. We get the biggest political movement, the most powerful political movement that I've ever witnessed that we're a part of here, the America First side. I'm just trying to keep an eye on what's a threat to it. Is this a threat? Let's continue.
I understand very well why it is wrong to compare Adolf Hitler's Third Reich to any other movement. It was uniquely evil, full stop. I get it. But there are important lessons from the history of that emergent evil, and here is one that I regard as essential.
I interrupt this because I'd flagged another item that Bill Maher was mad at Larry David for calling his dinner with Trump his dinner with Hitler. And Maher made the point, essentially, I'm paraphrasing, but it cheapens the Holocaust, which is the classic Dennis Prager point that he's been making for 20 years. It's always made sense. If you call everyone Hitler, then what was the Holocaust? If Trump is Hitler because he wants to deport illegally alien gang members, then you would like to think that there's a few other levels between that and incinerating millions of people in gas chambers. So, but if you act as though Trump is Hitler, then that really does mean that all the people who were slaughtered in the Holocaust, that it does cheapen their sacrifice and struggle, does it not? It feels like a fairly obvious point, but when you only walk around, as so many people do in Hollywood who are successful, like Larry David, one of the most successful people, in the last 50 years in Hollywood, when you have that type of lifestyle that you have your butt kissed all day, everyone's kissing your butt. It's not a normal lifestyle. So no one would tell him that, hey, bud, this is too far. So he'd have to be smart enough to come to it on his own. But when you look out at Al Gore, who's nearly president, and he's saying the exact same stuff, then it just empowers you to keep talking about Hitler all the time. So don't you want to wonder where the uniforms are and where the concentration camps are and where the infringement on free speech and rights and the locking up of political prisoners? Like, when is that going to kick in if he's really Hitler? When are we invading other countries? What are the parallels? What about the blatant racism? And what about the blatant anti-Semitism? None of it's here. We're not seeing any of it. Trump was president before. He lost. He stood aside, ultimately. People don't like to talk about that. He did stand aside. And he didn't go quietly, I wouldn't say, but he stood aside. And now he's back, elected with a bigger margin than ever. So you can't just let him govern for a little bit?
In the immediate aftermath of World War II, a small group of philosophers who had escaped Hitler's murderous regime returned to Germany and performed a kind of moral autopsy on the Third Reich. The most famous of the so-called Frankfurt School of philosophers was a man named Jürgen Habermas.
Is he taking himself seriously here? Because if I rolled into a speech, I keep trying to think of it, how this would work if I did it. If I rolled into a speech, I've got a speech coming up in a couple weeks. I'm trying to think about what I'm going to say. And if I came in and just started to compare all the Democrats to the Nazis, I would like to think people would be snickering at me and making fun of me. But you roll out and you talk like this and you hold your shoulders back, you deepen your voice and you announce. The Frankfurt School, if we've learned anything from it, is that Donald Trump is the true Nazi here. He's more Nazis than the Nazis themselves. The Nazis weren't even as Nazi as this Nazi, the president Nazi. It's just, what is this? Who is this appealing to at this point? How many years is this going to be their only move?
He described how the Nazis, and I quote again, attacked the very heart of the distinction between true and false, end quote. The Trump administration is insisting on trying to create their own preferred version of reality. They say Ukraine attacked Russia instead of the other way around.
That's what I'm saying with the lies. We never say that. We never say that. We always acknowledge Russia attacked. We just say that Zelensky then tried to rip off all of our money, and Russia would not have attacked had Donald Trump won the second time he ran, and had Joe Biden not ran a disastrous policy in that region. And that Russia invaded territory under Bush, Obama, and Biden, but not Trump. Those are the points we make. Not that Russia didn't start this particular war. Of course, Russia did. But we actually back out and look at all the factors that led to it, and we have a lot of fingers to point at Democrats.
And expect us to believe it. At home, they attack heroes who have defended our nation in war and against cyber attacks as...
Well, why are we attacking heroes? Also, I was thinking about who are the biggest members of the Frankfurt School. You know, Andrew Breitbart wrote a lot about the Frankfurt School, which is the Marxist intellectuals. A lot of them were German, and they came over, and a lot of them camped out in various spots in California. Andrew wrote a ton about them in his book, Righteous Indignation, which is a must read. If you guys haven't read it, it's incredible. And I did not know Jürgen Habermas was the most famous. I would have said Max Horkheimer, Theodor Adorno, Herbert Marcuse, maybe Eric Fromm. I don't know. I would not have said Jürgen Habermas. So I don't know if that's maybe I'm just not as historically literate as Al Gore. It's possible. He's not a dumb guy. He might even be a genius. He's not as smart as Katy Perry, though. It's Katy Perry is, remember, she is who Terry Crews wants to be. Terry Crews, he is inspired by Katy Perry because she is a true multi-hyphenate, because she's a pop star and she's an astronaut. And then she came back down from touching God himself in space. And she is now back on tour. I want you guys to check out this footage, the latest Katy Perry tour. Oh, yeah. She's grooving. She's grooving. If you guys are missing the visuals, there's no way to fully describe how sensational this is. These dance moves. And now she's going to shake her tush, and everyone cheers. Everyone loves the booty shake. She looks really sleepy. Oh, she's getting picked up. Wow, she jumps up not very high, and she falls over, spreading her legs, making a funny face. Now she's saying, let's go. This looks like a good tour. I'm looking for tickets. Okay, so I couldn't resist playing this. Misty pulled this for God knows what reason, Misty, but thank you. That's it. So you know what I think about, because I live out here and I have lots of friends and family members who are in the entertainment world, and some of them want to be pop stars. And if you make it and you make $100 million, then everything's cool. It all makes sense. But if you picture her not being a wealthy person, and where I pause this on the screen is kind of unbelievable. So that's all I got to say. It's funny. I pause at a funny spot in terms of her body language. But how do you do this behavior if you don't know you're going to get rich? Because if you have any shame or humility, I don't see how you would do it. I don't see how you would be capable of acting in this way. Acting a fool is the expression. Just terrible dancing. It's vaguely sexual, but not really that sexual. It's kind of, arguably, it's a turn off what she's doing. So I think this show's going to have to get a PG-13 rating, Misty. We're going to have to self-impose a PG-13. A lot of sexual content today for some reason. Not titillating content, though, also. Kind of the worst kind of sexual content, the cringe-inducing kind. I got 15 more seconds. Why not? The force of nature. I just saw such feminine empowerment during that. So I play all those Gore clips, and because we got to keep checking in, because we got to see is there any momentum building. Florida's got a Senate Democrat leader who's stepping down. The Democrat Party in Florida is dead. It's totally true. It's just, why do you want to spend your life if Florida's just getting completely overrun by the best governor in America, Ron DeSanctimonious, who should never be president, but is a fantastic governor of Florida and doing a great job down there. So he is. He was a terrible candidate, but he's great at being governor of Florida. And then Trump's policies are just not nearly as bad as people say. The media, don't always believe the media. Apple has shifted all of its U.S. iPhone assembly from China to India. I can't understate how big of a deal this is. My friend Carol Roth might disagree with me on this take, but I think this is a huge deal, because even if the tariffs come off soon, even if we don't make it all the way through and we choose not to die on the hill as I would like us to do, you look at this stuff that we've decoupled Apple from China. That's phenomenal. That's a phenomenal accomplishment. Apple is the most wealthy company in the world, arguably. We're all dependent on it. I've always detested Apple. I've always been an Apple consumer because I feel like it's better than the alternatives. And I've given them tens of thousands of dollars over the years. It doesn't make me happy to say that, but it makes it slightly better that at least they're going to be doing the assembly in a part of the world that's not directly hostile to the United States. Folks, have you seen what's happened to gold this year? It's up 25%, over $3,400 an ounce. Meanwhile, the stock market, it's total chaos, bouncing around, losing trillions of dollars. The Dow could have just seen the worst month since the Great Depression. Inflation's still running hot. We got the national debt at $36 trillion. All that spells chaos. But then there's gold, which Goldman Sachs says could hit $3,700 an ounce this year. And I've got friends at Priority Gold that can get you a free gold guide now that will teach you how you can buy gold for yourself. You'll learn how to lock in today's gold prices, and you'll learn how to invest in a IRA or 401k with gold, tax and penalty free. And all you got to do is text the letters SNC, as in Salem News Channel, Text SNC to the number 24999 to get your free 2025 gold guide right now. Just text SNC, like Salem News Channel, SNC to 24999, and you'll get your free gold guide now. Gold prices could increase at any time. That's why you got to text SNC to 24999 now to get in there with my friends at Priority Gold. That's nice to me. It's a big deal. It's a big win by Trump, and it deserves to be celebrated. We need to be celebrating this. And don't get too cowed by the media acting like everything's so bad. So it's have faith in the bright parts of the world to bring the truth. All right, other stuff going on. George Santos sentenced to 7 years in prison. This falls under one of my favorite Alex Marlowisms, where it's always the people you most expect. And you guys don't have to feel like you're a champion. You can be interested in guys like this, but you don't have to be a champion of every person just because they vote Republican. I didn't want Santos removed from office because it hurts the Republican side once he won. But obviously a guy of kind of confused moral character. He'll be in jail, and it'll be really interesting what his next act is when he gets out. Trump is going to the Pope's funeral over the weekend, so we'll see that. There's the U.S. president is supposed to be there, but supposed to be out of the limelight because of Vatican protocol. So always interesting to see the historical traditions on display. Catholic Church is one of the last bastions of historical tradition throughout the world. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes and the way Trump is received from what we can glean from whatever is out there. So I'm interested in that. We'll be seeing that. Get some consumer sentiment numbers. They're actually a bit up, but they're still at very low level. I was talking to Carney about this a little bit offline, and here's the reason why consumer sentiment levels are low is that what happens is there's this sort of vicious circle going on where establishment media and left-wing media keep announcing the tariffs are going terrible. They're really bad. Everything is going to be ruined because of these tariffs. And then that makes them either hoard money or they're perhaps trying to buy goods very quickly in an irrational way before tariffs kick in. And it's changing spending patterns. And then when the patterns change and it suggests maybe there's panic buying going on, et cetera, then they announce that that's evidence that the economy is doing bad. So they're using the tariffs to change their habits and then to fearmonger about the tariffs because their habits changed. And it goes on and on in a circle. So it's one of these things where we got to keep an eye on it because it's hard to suss out exactly where we're at economically, because there's a lot of reasons to show concern. That's why a lot of you guys are buying gold these days, which, we got great partners at Priority Gold over there. But it's one of these things where people do want to hedge. They do feel like there's chaos. But a lot of this is being fueled by left-wing establishment media who's telling us the world's going to end because of tariffs. And that coverage has changed the spending plans and the way people are budgeting. And that data is being used as evidence that things are chaotic. So, that we'll help you with that on the show and at Breitbart.com, as always. All right. And then the last one I'll bring up today is a fun one. And I have to say, this was another idea that I should have used to make money. I did not do it. The official Trump store is selling Trump 2028 hats, teasing a possible third term. I'm seeing even 2032 hats. I was making this joke in Trump's first term, and I never had the discipline to start a company, perhaps using Chinese sweatshop labor to make Trump 2028 hats. I should have done it. I probably could have retired by now and at least have a bigger budget for show production at a minimum. So I should have done it. But the Trump 2028 hats are now available in the Trump store. And I love the concept of discussing a third term. I don't know how he's going to pull it off, but if he could, I'd be interested. I think you got to change the Constitution, but I'm interested if he wants to do it. And I love who triggers all the bad guys. Maybe he takes another 4 years off and we figure it out by 2032 and 90-year-old Trump runs. That would be fine to me too. Maybe he's thinking of Don Jr. Maybe there's a different Trump who wants to run. Maybe Barron's going to run. It will have to amend the Constitution again because he's going to be too young. But you know what? I would love to see it because we love our Trumps and we love the trolling, especially when you get great merch out of it. All right, that'll be today's show. Thank you to all of you in the Marlow audience. I think the show had a great week. I saw us flying up the Apple charts. It means a lot. Leaving 5-star reviews, telling 10,000 friends and family members means a lot. Subscribing if you're on YouTube or Rumble, hitting that subscribe. People like that, and it helps us grow. Misty's doing a great job. More content for you at the Breitbart Fight Club app. If you need more, don't forget about those interviews I did if you missed those from earlier in the week. If you need some weekend content, I'll talk to you Monday.